Hey, how's it? So, today we're going to talk about the sun. Specifically, how to lay out your garden beds according to the sun in your garden. Some garden beds you can't really do anything about, so then it's more what you plant in there. But for those that are able to position garden beds according to the sun, then this video is definitely for you. I've made a few mistakes, I'm currently sitting in it, so we're going to discuss it. Let's get straight into it. Okay, so first things first, why is the sun important? Might be a bit of a stupid question, I don't know. But obviously, if you are trying to grow something, especially very productively, then you need to ensure that that plant has enough sunlight so it can photosynthesize, so it has all the nutrients available to it so it can grow its best. If it doesn't have enough sunlight, it's not going to grow. Points in fact. It could have the nutrients, it could have the water, but if it doesn't have sun, it's not going to do anything. So basically for that reason, you want to ensure that your plants are properly positioned in the sun. Now, all the plants have different requirements as to what they need in terms of sunlight hours. Some things like onions, they require daylight hours in the days themselves. You get short day and long day onions. And then other plants, they just require specific sun intensities. So for example, like your tomatoes and your peppers and your chilies, they require more intense sun, as opposed to say your leafy greens, like your lettuces and stuff. They require a little bit less of an intense sun, otherwise they tend to bolt and all that sort of stuff. Now, you could have the intensity right, but the sunlight hours could not be enough. Then it's going to be a stunted growth. You could have the sunlight hours enough, but then it's not intense enough, and then again you're going to have stunted growth. Now, what you can do is, obviously, if you have a garden bed that has a lot of shade and not a lot of sun, then you specifically plant things in there that does not require as much sun. Again, like your leafy greens, your lettuces and stuff. But now, if your bed is in a place where it gets a lot of sun, 10 hours plus a day, hot, dry, South African, Australian sun, wherever you are in the world, then putting lettuce there is not the right move. So you really need to ensure that you know what you want to plant and where you can plant. I think that's really the best way to say this. So why am I saying all of this? Why did I pick this topic this week? I've got some broccoli behind me. I've got some cabbages too. This garden bed, right, in the summer receives about 8 hours of sun per day. So I thought that this would be fine to grow my veggies in the winter. I forgot the sun changes its direction, bro, in the winter. Yeah, I forgot. That's the problem. You can know something, but you don't necessarily apply it. Like me. So, what I did is I planted a whole bunch of stuff here that's now struggling because they're not getting enough sunlight hours. These cabbages, right here, they're being attacked by pests. They're not growing, and because they're getting attacked by pests and they're not growing, is they're really starting to suffer. They're not actually forming their heads properly. My green cabbage is forming a bit of a head, but it's very loose. My purple cabbage, I sowed them and transplanted them at the same time. There's no head on there yet, bro. So it's a bit of a problem. And then here, I've got broccoli, right? I also planted these up quite a while ago. Fortunately, they're not being attacked by pests, but they're also not receiving as much sunlight that they need. Only the one of the 3 or 4 that I've planted here, only the one is actually forming head, and that's the one that's sort of in the sun right now at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This whole bed is in the shade. It gets like 1 hour of sun in the morning. Apart from beyond this trellis here, this cucumber trellis, everything beyond there at least gets sun for most of the morning. But then again, by like 11, 12 o'clock, the entire thing is in the shade. So it's a bit of a problem. So what once received enough sunlight to cultivate tomatoes and corn now doesn't get enough sunlight to cultivate cabbages and broccoli and even my herbs, what is it, cilantro and oregano, they're also struggling. So this area is actually where I had all the squash. So now that all the butternuts are cleaned up, now you can actually see what's going on. Now what I've done is I've sown some more seeds after my first frost date, by the way. So there's a few reasons for this. This bed gets a lot of sun. Even with the change of the sun's angle through winter months, this area still gets at least 6 to 7 hours of sun. You can see only there by the strawberries, that area is in shade at the moment. But from that point all the way up to here, man, it gets a lot of sun. It still gets a lot of sun, which is good. So what I've done, because of my little issue over there with the lack of sun there for everything, I've decided to try and sow some stuff. I've sown some Brussels sprouts and cabbages and kale and a whole bunch of other stuff, including beyond this peach tree here. So you can see my peas here that I've spoken about before. But then again, I've got some Brussels sprouts and cabbages. I've tried to sow again some carrots and lettuce and leeks and spring onions, because again, this area still gets a lot of sun. Now, why am I doing this? Because I know it gets a lot of sun. I know that at least that's not going to be an issue. The only issue is really going to be the heat of the area, throughout winter. What can I grow at low temperatures? So what I'm trying to do is, in order to get the seeds to germinate and to grow the seedlings to a suitable sort of size that can then sort of bat away the frost by themselves, is I have these little makeshift greenhouses just from bottles, because then I can grow them up and then I know going forward they still get enough sun. However, everything over there I know for a fact is doomed. I don't know if I'm actually going to get cabbages or not. I'm probably just going to eat the leaves as is. My cauliflower that's over there, they're hardly growing, and I planted these at the same time as my broccoli. Now, one other thing that did also screw them around is the trellis, but I mean, it's still a problem because this area gets so little sun per day now. They're not growing. I also planted some cabbages here quite a few weeks back, and they're so small. They're really struggling to get going. So I doubt that I'm actually going to get much of a harvest here between my cabbages, my cauliflower. Really, the only thing that's actually growing very nicely is all my lettuces. The basil is really starting to look sad and not be so lacquer now in the colder month. But these cabbages, they're struggling. The broccoli is struggling. So all of this, I don't think I'm actually going to get much of it because of an incorrect position. Because I forgot that the sun changes its axis or its direction in the winter. What once got a lot of sun, now in the winter doesn't. I underestimated it, and that's really why I'm doing this video, so that you guys can learn from my mistakes, so that you don't repeat the same thing. So let's get into how are we going to then sort this issue out. And I probably should also mention that this only really applies if there's like a lot of infrastructure around. So with this trellis, right, this little cucumber trellis that's shading out my cauliflower, because of that and the wall, they're getting a lot of shade. But if the trellis wasn't there, then they'd get a little bit more sun, just like everything here, but they would still get shaded out by the wall. So if the trellis wasn't there and the wall wasn't there, then it's not really an issue. Just, I could plant whatever I want. So really, all this comes down to is where's your shade falling and from what. So if you have hard infrastructure, you can't do anything about it. So that's where you start looking for, okay, what can I plant in this sort of situation? However, if you don't have hard infrastructure casting shadows onto your garden beds, this is assuming that the garden beds are already in position, then in that case, then all it is you need to then ensure that what you plant in those garden beds then don't shade each other out. So if you have, for example, like a trellis with peas or climbing beans, you want to plant that on the side that does not get as much, or the side that's not going to cast the shadows onto everything else. right? I'm not going to say the north side or south side because obviously everyone's different in the wall. Now, what you want to look for is so the sun's trajectory, right? Here for me, it's running in this direction, not exactly parallel or perpendicular to these walls. It's sort of at an angle. Now, all the beds that's running on that same sort of line, those are the ones that are struggling on the south side of the wall. The beds, like my sunflowers, that's on the north side of the wall in the same direction, has no issue. My garden beds that's somewhat perpendicular to that on the eastern side of the wall is fine. Okay, so then how do you then position your garden beds accordingly? So I just want to quickly say that there's sort of two ways that you would want to look at the sun depending on what you want to do according to what you have. If you're starting from scratch, right, then the best option is to create a sun map, which I'll go through just now, because you're starting from scratch, right? You don't have any garden beds, or maybe you don't have anything planned yet for the garden beds. You don't really know what you want to grow, but you don't really have much to begin with. So you have a clean canvas, you can then position stuff accordingly. So in that case, then what you want is you want a sun map, which indicates what areas receive how much sun per day, so that you can then say, okay, this area receives 8 hours of sun per day, let's put a garden bed there. This area receives 10 hours of sun per day, let's put a garden bed there. This area receives 2 hours of sun per day, let's not put a garden bed there, right? So it's pretty much like if you're starting from scratch, or you don't really know what you want to plant, and you are able to create and position garden beds accordingly. Create a sun map. If, however, number 2, you have garden beds already and you're unable to expand, right? And perhaps in the situation you know generally what you want to plant, but you don't know where you want to plant them, then the best thing is you can still do a sun map, but it's actually recommended because then it's essentially a sun map that you have going forward, and it makes your guesswork a little bit less. But then in that case, probably your easiest thing to do is take a Saturday, see, okay, this area, I don't know, you get 5 hours of sun per day from in the morning. Let's plant some stuff here, some lettuces and some cabbages. This area receives 8 hours of sun per day. It's a lot of hot, intense sun. So let's put more hardy things there, maybe some Brussels sprouts, also cabbages or whatever. But then we leave the lettuces and we put them somewhere else. So that's sort of the two ways you can do it. Create a sun map, or just check where your sun is and say, okay, there's enough sun here, let's go. So I think it also comes down to your gardening style. If you want to be a little bit more pedantic and meticulous, a sun map's probably going to be a bit more fun. But if you're more of a chaos gardener or a bit more impatient and you just want to get stuff going so that you get the ball rolling, then probably just picking a spot that you know at least gets enough sun, that's probably going to be your best bet. Okay, so now just quickly. Now, this is specifically in a South African context. I am in Joburg. The sun, again, for everyone, no matter where you are in the world, goes from east and it sets in the west. So, right, north for me is in this direction. Okay, south is in this direction, east is in this direction, west is in this direction. This is the northern side of the building. Okay, it's on the northmost side of the building. If it was on the other side of the house, further away, it would be the south side. So this is the south side, this is the north side. North faces this way, right? This is the northern side of the building. It faces north. This receives more sun than the south side of this wall. Okay, again, this is a Joburg, South African context. So, I want to plant here in the southern hemisphere, in Joburg, in South Africa, on the northern face of a building or a piece of infrastructure. If you're in the northern hemisphere, it will be the exact opposite. You want to then plant, or preferably have your high sun requirement stuff on the southern side of a piece of infrastructure. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if it isn't. Yeah. Okay, so then how do we actually go about this? And what you do need to understand or keep in mind, I think that's a better thing to say, is that in the summer and the winter, your sun is going to change direction, right? Now, that's obviously then going to influence you, because then technically you need two maps, one for summer, one for winter. And that's something that I took for granted. I didn't really think about it, and that's why I've got this little bit of an issue now. In the summer, I'm hunky-dory, I'm good. But now in the winter, I've got a bit of a problem. So you do need to keep that in mind. Secondly, and this is one thing that I always get confused about, like when I'm watching people on YouTube, is that if you're in the northern hemisphere or you're the southern hemisphere, it's going to essentially, everything's going to be swapped around. So when people say, if they're in the northern hemisphere, they say, don't plant something on the northern side of a wall, because then it's going to get shaded out. Then if you're in the southern hemisphere, then it's the exact opposite. It's not then the north. Might have that just switched around. I'll put it up if it is, but just as an example. So that's also something you need to keep in mind. So really, and the way I'm going to approach giving my understanding about this is, you want to plant your garden beds perpendicular to the sun's direction of movement over the course of the day. No matter where you are, north or south, the sun moves from east to west, right? So your garden beds are going to typically run from south to north, or north to south. Technically it's the same direction, it's north to south, south to north, it's the same line. So as long as it's perpendicular to that sort of axis, then your crops should get the maximum amount of sun hours per day. But again, if there's no hard infrastructure around, then technically, no matter which direction you position your garden bed in, they're all going to be the same, because there's nothing casting shadows on it. But like I said just now with the peas, is then you need to watch out on what you're planting in there, because then if you're planting something that grows very tall or requires support like a trellis, then that could then cast shadows onto everything else. So again, ultimately what you want to try and do is you want to position your garden beds perpendicular to the sun's direction of movement. That's really what it comes down to. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly perpendicular. I mean, my garden beds aren't exactly 90-degree angles to the sun's direction of movement. I'm doing alright. I'm not as efficient as some other people, but I'm doing okay. So I think that's really all you need to keep in mind. So I don't really want to try and overcomplicate this. I don't want to confuse myself or anyone else and say the wrong thing and maybe mislead anyone, but that's really what it comes down to. Just as the simplest way, orient the stuff perpendicular to the sun's direction. Then you should be fine. Now, let's start talking about this map. How are we going to create a map? I want to create a map. I want to have some fun. I want to draw some shit. How do I do this? Okay, so this is what we're going to do. The easiest way is you grab a coffee, you grab a pen or a pencil. It doesn't actually matter. It could be a marker, a color pencil. You just need something to be able to write, and you need a piece of paper. Start on one side of your yard. You are going to firstly demarcate your infrastructure, so your walls and stuff. Then, if you do have garden beds already existing, draw them in. Try and get the sort of proportions as accurate as possible, but it doesn't have to be like exactly measured out and stuff. At the end of the day, you just want some indication of what's going on. So you're going to have your hard infrastructure, and you're going to have your garden beds. Then you want to put anything that could potentially cast shadows. So trees, right? Shrubs, any large shrubs, any maybe trellises or ornaments, like very large ornaments that you have. put those on the map as well. Again, it doesn't have to be a fully rendered, highly realistic drawing. You just need a circle or a dot or something to indicate, okay, here is something. Then you are going to have a few cups of coffee or tea or a beverage of your choosing on a Saturday or Sunday or whenever you else choose. So what you're going to do at about 8 o'clock in the morning, take that map that you've created, come out and see, okay, where are the shadows falling? I've got no shadows. Okay, here I've got a little bit of a car shadow. And you draw it in, and then you can say 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever. You're going to go around. Okay, I've got a bit of a shade here, but this is like dapple. It's not really like a hard car shadow, so I'm not going to worry too much about this. Here is full sun, so there's no indications that I need to do. Oh, okay, here now I've got a massive hard shadow, car shadow that I've got. Okay, so let's draw this in onto our map. We're going to draw this in 8 o'clock or whatever time I do that. You're going to do that a few times in the day. I recommend you do it a few times early in the morning and a few times late in the day. So the reason I'm saying that, the shadows move faster in the early hours of the day and the later hours of the day because of the direction of the sun that it's casting the shadow. Or I think you guys know what I'm trying to say. So you don't need to go every single hour of the day. Choose like 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, maybe 12 o'clock, just to see where everything is, but technically the sun should be facing straight down, so unless you've got any overhead or anything directly overhead your garden beds, then you shouldn't have any real issues. Then go at like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock or whatever, something to that effect. If you do 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon, then you should have enough data to say, okay, which zones get sunlight when. So you're going to then take your little map, you're going to have lines going across saying 7 o'clock in the morning, this is when it gets some shade. Now is 1 o'clock, right? 1 o'clock it's got shade, and then let's say 3 o'clock it's going to be out here because it's winter and how everything goes. You are then going to be able to see, okay, this area gets 7 hours of sun per day, whereas this area only gets 5 hours of sun per day. So if I want to create a new garden bed, instead of putting it here, I'll then put it here. That's essentially how it's going to work. You could also do it in a different way where you just monitor it throughout the day and then you directly put straight onto that map saying, okay, this area gets 7 hours of sun per day, this area gets 5 hours of sun per day, this area gets 4 hours of sun per day, or whatever. You can also do it that way. Just the way I did it, because I did it over a few different days, just because of time. I'll put down 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit of a nice reference. It's a little bit of work in the beginning just to get it right. And, it's going to look kind of ugly and not so lacquer. But at the end of the day, again, you just want a bit of an indication of what's going on. Once you have that map, you've got that map, the work is done. You can always then transfer it onto another page to make it look nicer, a little bit more legible. You can always laminate it and put it in with your garden stuff, put it in the garden, put it on a board in the garden so that everyone can see, oh no, check, here's all the sun zones. It's something that I actually want to do. I think it's a cool idea. But that's ultimately how you're going to create a map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate my map because I've lost mine. I'm going to recreate it and then I'm going to insert it here so that you guys can sort of see what I'm trying to very poorly explain. So that's pretty much the video. Just to recap, the easiest way to go about this is plant perpendicular to the sun's movement. No matter where you are in the world, the sun is going to rise in the east and set in the west. So plant perpendicular. If you're going to say north to south or south to north, it's the same line, really. Same thing. But if you're in the southern hemisphere, you want to plant on the northern side of a piece of infrastructure. If you're in the northern hemisphere, you want to plant on the southern side of a piece of infrastructure. that's essentially the easiest way to do it. If you want to create a map, then at least you have some point of reference going forward. Do it, it'll take a day or two, but then you just need to keep in mind something that I didn't do, is that the shadows cast is different between summer and winter. And really what took me by surprise, because again, everyone knows it, but the severity to which it happened, I'm actually shocked. I can't remember it being like this, bro. It's shocking. So yeah, what can I say, man? We all make mistakes. Yeah, and that's a pretty big one, and unfortunately my winter plans might suffer as a result, but whatever. Yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there. So let me know if this isn't clear enough. When I'm busy editing this, hopefully I put some comments down. Hopefully I don't need to, hopefully it's clear enough. But if it is still a bit confusing, let me know. I can try and redo this video or something. Again, I tend to ramble on. I don't really get to the point sometimes. So let me know if you guys still need a little bit of help with this. For the next few videos, it's going to still be garden planning. I don't really know which ones yet. I've got a few ideas, but let me know if there's anything specific that you guys want to see, and we can make it happen. So yeah, hopefully this was at least entertaining, if not informative. Hopefully I at least caused you guys to think about this a little bit, so that you don't make the same mistake as me. You guys let me know. So yeah, if you guys like hearing me ramble on about random gardening stuff, check out my playlist. Yeah.